I love when Yom Kippur falls on Shabbat. It's this double holiness. I assume that each one of you has a different time during Yom Kippur when you feel lousy. For some of you, it might be in the morning when you cannot have breakfast. For some, maybe in the evening. For me, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just between the children's service and the afternoon service. I have about 15 minutes, right? And I sit down and I feel exhausted. I start to nurse this mild headache that comes from not drinking, not eating, and not having my regular a lot of coffee. But this year, I believe it's going to be much easier. Because the truth is that I have been feeling like that every single day since October 7th. And I think that almost everyone in Israel feels like that, and many of you here. It's this sluggish feeling, like there is a dark cloud constantly hovering over our heads. And it's a year later. Aren't we supposed to feel better after a year? The Jewish tradition teaches us so well how to grieve properly. Really, when you follow the Jewish tradition, you handle grief and mourning easier. And one of the ideas is that we divide mourning into 3 cycles. The first is the Shiva, the week after death, when the pain is so intense, almost unbearable. But then we have the Shloshim, the 30 days. Still very painful, but we have to go back to life, to interact with people, to work. And then we have the year. And after a year, some communities call it 11 months, but after a year, we're no longer mourners. We don't say Kaddish. The Talmud even tells us, Rebbe Meir in the Talmud says, that if you meet a person who had lost a loved one 12 months prior, you're not allowed to talk to them about their grief. And why is that? He said it's akin to a surgeon who meets a person who was injured and is healed now, and he tells him, why don't I open up your wound so I'll be able to heal it again? He said, talking to people after a year, you just open up their wounds. So don't. But we're not healed. Our wounds did not close up. Actually, last year seems like we met many of these surgeons. Each time when things seem to be a little bit better, something happened and they open up again, another wound. And we've been bleeding since. But the reason that we feel so bad, I believe, goes beyond the obvious loss and anger. We did lose 1,200 people. And 101 hostages are still unknown. God knows what's happening there. And our army is fighting in 7 fronts. It's interesting. In American papers, they say 4 fronts. Israeli paper, they count 7. So for the 7, you have Gaza and you have Lebanon. But then we have terrorism from the West Bank and missiles that keep coming from Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and missiles from Iran. And you all know that. But I think that the intensity of our suffering comes from somewhere deeper. Rabbi Soloveitchik in the 1950s was asked if the Jews in the diaspora are one people or many different peoples. Because they speak different languages. They follow different Jewish customs. So is it one or many? And he answered in a quite bizarre yet powerful way. he quoted something from the Talmud, one of these weird things from the Talmud in which the rabbis, I think, just had fun arguing. And the question is, listen to that, because you never thought about this question. A man who has two heads should put on one set of tefillin or two sets of tefillin? Or a man with two heads, would he inherit like one person, or his inheritance will be double than the inheritance of the rest of the siblings? And Rabbi Soloveitchik says, you know how to solve this question? All you need to do is to pour hot water on one head. If the other head screams in pain, it's one person. If not, well, two people. And I think that for the most part, when something bad happens to a Jewish community, the other head scream in pain. So when something so bad happens in Israel, the American Jewish community screams in pain. They feel a pain, not the same pain. We're not in a competition of suffering, but it's not the same. But this time, for the first time in 76 years, something bad happened in Israel, and we, here in America, suffered as a result of it. Not just our sympathy for Israel, but we actually suffered. What is the cause of this suffering? A short time ago, we all prayed Kol Nidre. It was beautiful. But the meaning is quite problematic, because we are saying to God, you know, God, all the promises and vows that we made the previous year are null and void. We want to start a new year with a clean slate, so forget about all the promises that we didn't have the time or the opportunity to fulfill. Sounds nice, we love it, but when it comes to us, we don't want anyone to break a promise that was made to us. Especially a deep and fundamental promise. And many of them were broken on October 7th, some for Israelis and some for American Jews. I think that's why we cannot really heal. And let me mention some of these deep promises, and I'll start in Israel. You know, I always considered being Israeli and American as one of the biggest blessings of my life. This year, I think it resulted in double pain. But that's my life. For Israelis, the first promise that was broken was the promise of safety. You expect to be safe in your house. And if something happens, you expect the army to come and deal with it. But the army didn't come and dealt with it. And then you expect the police, the paramedics, the fire department. Nobody came for hours and hours. And we Israelis always knew our army is the best in the Middle East, one of the best in the world. We have the best intelligence. How didn't we know? We just spent billions of dollars building this fence that separates us from Gaza, and few barbaric murderers with rudimentary weapon and few tractors just broke it and entered Israel and did whatever they wanted. And nobody came to help. You know, we visited, Kabi and I, in June, 2 army bases near Gaza. And the terrorists just came and broke the fence and killed soldiers. And one of them, they even occupied, they controlled it for more than 24 hours. This is huge. You promised us safety. Second, is the entire idea of Zionism. What is Zionism? After the pogroms in Russia, right? 80-81, the Kishinev, the Zionists, the leaders said, the only way to end pogroms is to have a Jewish state. So we worked really hard, we're fighting, we built a state. And then we had the biggest pogrom since the Holocaust. And I'm sure that you had this expression, the biggest pogrom since the Holocaust, 1,000,000 times, because that's how Israelis feel. They go back to the Holocaust. It's not that they compare it, but you said this is the end of pogroms. This is the end of Jewish history. They will never do it to us again. This is Zionism. And what happened? What happened to this dream? What happened to the promise? And the third one, at least from the perspective of Israel, despite everything, Israelis believe in peace. And it's not so elusive as you think. We have peace with Egypt for almost 50 years now. And despite everything that happened in the region, even a revolution in Egypt, this peace is strong. It's not a love affair. Egyptians don't come to hang out in Tel Aviv or vice versa. But it's strong. And we have peace with Jordan and United Emirates and Morocco. And we knew that it will take time, but we believe that eventually there will be some peace. Do you believe that there will be peace? Can we talk even theoretically about two-state solution? I don't know. It sounds something from the past, like I'm talking about the destruction of the temple. Where are we going? You promised us peace. No? And here in America, really, for the first time, we really suffered. Anti-Semitism went up 400% since October 7th. I mean, they hate us when we do well, they hate us when we're victims. It's crazy. And we always said there is anti-Semitism from the right and from the left. So this time is more from the left, the next time it will be. Isn't it going to end? And I'm not talking about months after the IDF went into Gaza. I'm talking about immediately when it happened. Already people hated the Jews. Before we even responded, they hated us. This is crazy. We thought that we are accepted here, unconditionally, and we were. Look how well you did. We all did. But, in a book from 2016, one of the most important books about American Jewish history, the author writes that there's no real reason to talk about anti-Semitism today because it's a matter of the past. 2016. It's not a matter of the past. And it's just getting more serious. Universities. Jewish kids are no longer safe in universities. After they stopped with the quotas in the 60s, there were quotas for how many Jews can go to the elite universities. Jews started to flourish. But now they're not safe in so many universities. And I mentioned it on Rosh Hashanah, when the heads of some of the greatest universities in the world said that saying that killing Jews, it depends on the context. Well, this is a major promise that was broken. We're in a different place. So many Jewish students don't feel safe anymore. And this is here. This is here in America. Did I do well depressing you on Yom Kippur, or I should keep going? My goal was really not to depress you. My goal just to tell you, or I try to explain to myself why this time is so different than all the other times, and why even time is not really helping to heal. And of course, I can give many more examples, but I decided to stop here. Maybe I'll add one more that really hurts me. Because we as American Jews also feel betrayed by so many social action and social justice organizations we helped to start, we were major figures in, and when we needed their support, they were not there for us. Think about feminist organizations. I mean, we were at the front, Betty Friedan and others, right? And when they heard that Jewish women were raped, when they know how difficult it is to be a Jewish woman in Gaza, before Hamas, they could do almost whatever they wanted. Hamas came, they have to must wear hijab, they're forced to get married. It's like, that's for another class that I will teach after the holidays. But when it comes to the Jews, we don't take any position. LGBTQ organizations? Come on. You know that the law in Gaza, since the Hamas, is homosexuality is an offense that you go to jail for 10 years? And many people got killed when caught having gay sex. And they support Hamas? African American organizations were so active, marched together. Probably all of you remember the story of Rabbi Heschel marching hand in hand with Martin Luther King on the march to Washington. No, we're not taking a position. It hurts. We feel betrayed. We were there whenever you needed us, and where are you now? Despite all of that, I feel lousy, I feel pain. But to be honest with you, I feel hope. I really feel hope. In a way even greater than I felt before. That's what the past year did to me. Tomorrow you'll have to come to listen why I feel hope. Because I'm restricted to 20 minutes. But I'll just give you a few things to consider, okay? So yes, the Israelis were shocked and the army did not function. But the army eventually, after October 7th, there was October 8th. And this is not Kishinev and the pogroms in Russia. Because after they slaughtered us, what did Bialik, the poet, said? We went to the synagogue and cried. We didn't. We have an army. So it messed up. But it made tshuva. It repented. And got back the confidence of the public. Not the government, by the way. They didn't, and I hope they'll never get. But the army did. The university situation is dire, but think about the heads of the universities. Most of them lost their jobs in the past year. Do you know that? One after another was even forced to resign or resigned. Last week, there was a conference at Johns Hopkins University. At 75 presidents of universities came to learn how to deal with anti-Semitism. And they deal with it. It's not perfect. It was never perfect. It will never be. But we don't read every day in the papers about Jewish kids who are being attacked in universities. It's true, anti-Semitism is rising, but we have so many friends. Last November, there were 300,000 people in Washington marching for Israel. 300,000. Greater than the march in Washington during Martin Luther King. This is huge. And by the way, next November, I believe November 10th, there is another one, and I want to go. Okay, so we do have a lot of reasons also to feel good. Things are not as they used to be, that we couldn't respond, we couldn't react. The number of Jewish organizations since 2000 doubled. And after October 7th, when you read Jewish journals and papers, they all talk about a surge, about a renewed interest of Jews in Judaism. Jews feel more Jewish. They want to be more connected to Judaism. They want to learn more. And there are many examples. So not all is bleak. There are signs of good things, but tomorrow I will explain to you what's the deep reason that makes me feel a real sense of hope. It's not hope that in 2 weeks everything will be fine, but hope that when we do the right things together, we will create a better world for all the Jews in the world, because we are one people. They attacked us all, and we will more than prevail. We will get better. To be continued. Shana Tova.